This is Joel, and in this video we'll talk a little more about Cisco Umbrella. I did an introductory video into Umbrella a few months back, but in this one we'll look into like an end-to-end, right? We'll look into a lot of other advanced features of Umbrella as well, right? So now you can either set up your own lab, but in my case, if you have a CCO ID, then you can reserve a lab on Cisco dcloud, right? Cisco dcloud is a very easy way to learn Cisco technology. There are a lot of labs out there, to get you accustomed with some of this cool technologies, right? Similar to Cisco DevNet, right, where you can reserve sandboxes and you can practice some of these technologies. So in this one, we'll be using dcloud, right? So if you have a Cisco ID, you can follow along as well. Yeah, this is a very simple topology. We have an Active Directory, which is acting as both the AD as well as the DNS server. We've got a normal employee workstation from where we'll be connecting to the internet and leveraging Umbrella. We also have another workstation, and think of it as connected to a guest network and and the CSR router is going to be like a default gateway. And from the CSR router, we'll try to set up some kind of tunnels to Umbrella and do all the cloud filtering and so on, right? But to begin with, what we'll do is we'll RDP into this Active Directory and we'll bring up our DNS Network Protection, right? We'll set up the DNS security, right? That's going to be our step number one. So yeah, let's get into the AD. Now I've RDP'd into it, so I think it should be here. There we go. So what we'll do first, let's log into Umbrella and let's see what's happening. Okay, so signing in. Technically, if you have your own Umbrella setup, you'll have to put in your username and password, but here it's automated, so you don't really need to do that, right? It is going to automatically, based on SSO, it's going to log you in. Probably they're using some kind of cookies, caching of cookies to do that, right? But nevertheless, this is what we have. This is the dashboard. It's trying to load. Make sure when you set up your lab on dcloud, try to set it up in the region which is closer to you. That way, it's going to be much quicker. But yeah, there you go. Let's wait for a second. All right, we've got that. So this is what it looks. Everything looks 0 right now because we really don't have any traffic. We have not set up the Umbrella for our organization yet. So now to do that, what we can do is let's start. There are some bookmarks given to you here at the top, right? So you can use that to your disposal. Step number one, I would say let's do a quick check, right? So let's go to this. There's a test site, right, called welcome.umbrella.com, and if you go to that, it will tell you if you're currently using Umbrella or not, right? So right now you can see it's telling me that the device, which is my Active Directory, from the Active Directory, it's telling me that we are actually not using Umbrella right now. That's why it's all red. Okay, so at the end of this test, what we'll be able to do this is we'll be able to come back and check here, right? As an outcome of this scenario number one or test number one, we'll be setting up Umbrella and we'll be able to see that over here right in this page. Okay, so what do we do? Let's start by probably looking at what is my IP address, right? So let's go to my IP address. There's again a hyperlink provided to you here, and that when you hit that hyperlink, it basically gives you the public IP address, right, of your Active Directory, right? So we will have to basically grab the address, right? We'll have to grab the public IP address. Actually, you'll have to grab the public IP address of the DNS server, right, from where the DNS requests are going to be originated. In my case, Active Directory, DNS server, the machine where I'm setting up Umbrella, everything seems to be the same machine. But in your environment, you will have to get the address of the DNS server actually, because at the end of the day, what is Umbrella? It's providing you one of the most important functionality is DNS security, right? So all the DNS requests are going to be generated from this particular device, which is the DNS server. So this is my IP address of that. So we'll grab that IP address. Did we copy it? Maybe not. Let's try that again. Let's copy it. Okay. So now we will come down to my Umbrella dashboard and we'll basically get to the section called deployments. We'll go to core identities and we'll go to networks. Okay, and there is nothing right now, right? So I'll basically go and say plus, right? let's put our network name. We'll say my lab, right? So you can give any name, doesn't matter. It's just a user-friendly name. So I'm going to say my lab. This is what I'm setting up right now, right? And let's give the IP address which we copied earlier, and the mask is going to be /32, right? So it depends on this is basically your DNS network, right? So we are basically pointing your network. We are basically pointing our DNS servers, right, on the umbrella, right? So so that's the IP address of my DNS server. It's a /32, and that should be fine. I'm going to say save. So now we have provided umbrella with the identity of our DNS network. Okay. So once that is done, what do we do next? So we have done stuff from the from the umbrella side of things. Now we'll basically quickly go to our DNS server here, right? So we have a shortcut here to get to the DNS server. So we can click on that, and it's going to open up. Open that, maybe not. Okay, there you go. So step number 1 would be probably go to properties, right? And there's a section called forwarders, right? So what you need to do is, this is my current DNS server, and I need to point my DNS server to the umbrella, right? The same umbrella dashboard where I just now put the IP address of my DNS server, right? So I'll have to point it. So you see forwarders, go click on edit, and there is something which is pointed to right now, but I'm going to change that, right? So I'm going to say what, 208. So these are the public IPs of umbrella. This will always remain constant. Even for your deployment, this is going to be the same. So there are 2 IP address. I'm assuming it's for redundancy, right? There you go. It resolves immediately as soon as you put it. Let's put the other guy as well, which is, do it correctly. Let me do that again. So let's click on forwarders, and let's click on edit, and you can edit that. It's 208.67. It's 222. Let's put the other 222 as well. Okay, that's good. And there's one more, which is 208.67. 67 and 220. Okay, there you go. So you can see the validation also should basically show up here, right? Looks good to me. Both the DNS servers have gone in. I'm going to say okay. I'm going to say probably apply, and then looks good. I'm going to say okay again, right? Okay, perfect. And a couple of things to be done here. Go and clear the cache of your DNS server, right? Just to make sure that it is using the new DNS server for all the resolutions. Did it go through? Let's do that again. Clear cache. Okay, it's trying to do it, I believe. Okay, let's wait. Okay, the other thing we got to do is probably go down to the command prompt, open it in administrator mode, and let's flush out any DNS entries which might be there, right? So let's do ipconfig, and let's do flush DNS. Okay, there we go. So we have flushed out everything, and now we should be good to continue with our configuration, right? So let's now quickly go to our browser. So earlier we saw that it was not using umbrella. So now let's do the test again. And this time you can see, welcome to umbrella, your internet is faster. It basically means that right now my Active Directory, or basically the every request which is going through my DNS server is actually using umbrella, for resolution, and we are basically protected by Cisco Umbrella. I mean, we haven't set up any policies yet, but basically the default policy is acting, and we are using umbrella, right? So this is the initial check. We still haven't done any major stuff. What we did was we just pointed our DNS servers, which is this particular AD, right, which is running on this particular Active Directory. We have just pointed it to umbrella, and we have configured on both the sides, right? We configured it on the Active Directory, and we configure it on the umbrella as well, and everything looks good. So now we'll get into the whole policies part, right? So that's where we'll start with the DNS policy. Let's go back to our go back to the overview. Don't worry about this. It should take it sometimes takes 1-2 hours for the metrics and all of that to show up. But let's continue with the configuration. Let's go to the policies section. So let's close the deployment. Let's go to policies. So here on the left hand side, you will find all the policies which we'll be playing around, right? First thing is we'll probably go to this destination list, right? So these are basically policy components, and on the top you have the various policies. Now here you see there are two things: global allow list, global block list. Okay, so we can basically go and add here. You can add something, right? We could probably add something like let's say 888.com, right? So let's say that's a website we want to allow, right? So we are basically going to add it in the allowed list. Okay, so you'll have to allow it and then you'll have to save it. Okay, and the block list, maybe what do you want to add? We could add anything, right? Probably we could add something like let's say Ford.com, right? You could use anything for your testing. I'm just going to add something like Ford.com. Basically what we're trying to do is we are trying to allow users from accessing the websites, or basically the URLs, domains basically mentioned in the allow list, and whatever you put it in the block, it's basically going to get blocked. Pretty straightforward, right? So I'm going to save that, and there you go, we've got that updated. So now we could basically go and get started with the policies, right? So what we did was we basically set up a component very similar to how you configure stuff in your SD-WAN, right? You set up your feature templates, and then you go and attach it to your device templates. Very similar to that, you are setting up all the components here, the smaller pieces, and you are all putting it together in your policies. So we'll set up a DNS policy. Either you can edit the default policy or you can set a new policy. So I'm going to create a new policy, right? So yeah, I clicked on the add, and now I'm going to go to advanced settings. There are a couple of settings which we could probably turn on here. So let's click on advanced. We'll probably turn on this log all requests, right? Let's keep that up because then we can see the logs. We'll also probably enable safe search, and I'll show you where that gets enabled, right? This is mainly more of a search engine kind of a feature, and I'll show you where that gets enabled in a minute. But let's enable these two, and let's say next. This is the place where you select identities, right? You can have so many different types of identities. Okay, so in our case, we are basically going to select what? We are going to select this network identity, right? So I'm going to click on that, and what is the network which I just now added, which was my lab, right? So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go next. So this identity basically tells you what you are trying to protect, right? So that's important. Coming to the next, the categories to block, right? So these are all the various categories of domains and websites and URLs which you can block. So I'm going to click on edit and select everything, right? It's already selected, so I don't have to worry. I'm going to go to the next. But you can see here, right, the websites which have malicious software or newly seen domains, you can enable the stuff which you need. I'm going to enable everything here. So we're going to save that and go to the next screen here again. There you go. And what do we have here? Again, here there are, Umbrella comes with some pre-built levels of security, right? So you have high, moderate, and low. So if you go for a high, you might end up with some false positives, right? Which means they might be legitimate websites, but you might end up blocking them. So I would probably go to moderate, and here on the right hand side it tells me all the categories which are getting blocked, right? In high, you will basically have an even bigger list, right? I'm going to go with moderate here. I'm going to go to the next screen. Let's see, control applications. You can go granular level till the application, right? Shopping websites and social media and so on. But in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to touch this for now. Let's keep this as is. We'll probably explore this later. Let's keep it default and let's go next. So this is the these are the lists which we earlier created, right? The global allow list and the global block list. So it shows one over here, which means that it has the websites which we added. We added 888.com on the top, and I think we added Ford.com below, right? So that's good. So let's go to next. File inspection, let's enable it, right? And now when it comes to the default appearance, okay, so this is relating to the block page. So when Umbrella blocks a certain website, right? I mean, how does it even block? We have talked about this in the previous video, but the idea is that Umbrella is it's basically acting as a DNS server, correct? So if it feels that you're trying to access a malicious website, it is going to, instead of replying back to you with the actual IP address of the website, it is going to reply back with the IP address of what? Its own block page, right? So here we are preparing that block page, right? So you can either use the default or you can create something new. So to create something new, it's pretty simple. You can go here. Looks like I have created something before. I can either use that or basically stick to the default ones. But it's pretty simple to create as well. You can just click on create, and you can select what options do you want. Like for example, I can click on differently here, and I can get different block pages for different types of blocking, right? So categories blocked by the category settings, and I can update this HTML and stuff over here. So, and then I can also put a redirect URL, which means if a user gets blocked, then they'll be redirected to maybe a company website or something like that, right? So a lot of customizations can be done with respect to the block page. Let's probably stick to the default one and go to next here. And that's good. There we go. So we have the policy name to be put. We'll put MyLab, and what policy this is, DNS policy. So that looks good. This is more like a summary page telling you about all the configurations which you just now did. I'm going to save that. Okay, there we go. So the policy has shown up here, and I think it's time for us to generate some traffic, right? So before going to our AD on the browser, we can also generate some traffic using this option called policy tester. So you have policy tester. Let's select the identity which we want to test it against. Like in this case, I want to test it against I think MyLab, right? That's the identity which I just now created. So let's wait. It is okay. There you go. Select that. That's basically nothing but my network, right, which I just now created. So I just selected that. And let's see, let's try to generate some traffic, something like as simple as cisco.com, right? And run test. And on the right hand side, it's going to tell you how Umbrella is going to behave based on the policies which you have deployed. It's basically telling that cisco.com will basically pass through, and you can see this policy was applied, which I just now created, and everything is good, right? So we have the policy applied, destination was allowed, blah blah, like all of the right things. We can also check the website like 888.com. That's the one which we allowed, right? So that should go in as well. And there you go. That's going in. Let's change this to Ford.com, because remember we added this Ford.com as a deny list. Basically, we added it to the blocked list. So this shouldn't go, right? There you go. It's getting blocked. So it basically means that our policies are working fine. So it's time to actually test it in the real world, which means I'm going to open one more one more tab here probably, and let's try that. Let's try those websites, 888.com, right? Let's try Ford.com, okay? And let's try probably also Cisco.com, right? Let's see the results. What is happening? So 888.com went through, right? This is how the website is. So, it went through, so no issues over there. And that's how it is supposed to. Coming to the block, there you go. Looks like the Ford.com got blocked. And if you probably click on this diagnostic info, it will give you the reason as well. So there you go. It got blocked. It basically hit the block. You can see the block type is because the domain list, right? We added this domain to the block list, and that's why it got blocked, right? So you'll basically get a lot of information out of this diagnostic info as well. And the Cisco.com obviously went through because that is what was expected, right? So the other thing is probably the safe search, right? So I can probably open up Google here. Let's go to Google, right? And probably we can search for something. Let's search for Cisco Umbrella. And when you search that, you can see on the right hand side, let's give it a second. Yeah, on the right hand side, we should actually see safe search appear here. Maybe I might have to close the browser and turn it on again. So let me bring it up again. Maybe there might be some kind of a cache, right? So let's try that again. Let's go to probably google.com and let's search for, it's a bit slow, that's expected. So let's search for maybe something like Cisco Umbrella. Okay, interesting. Okay, so I just had to close the browser and refresh the DNS once again, flush the DNS out, and finally you can see the safe search is on here, right? Which means the policy got applied. Okay, so we basically tested that Umbrella is actually working. You can see it's basically telling us that our network is protected by Umbrella right now. We can also probably go back to the dashboard. And we verified, obviously we verified the websites which are getting allowed. We also verified that there are certain websites which are getting blocked based on our policies, which we defined. We defined a global allow list and we defined a global block list. So that's working as expected. So I think this is looking good. I think you'll still not see data immediately. So we'll wait for some time until the data comes, and then we'll continue with our next scenario. All right, left it to rest for a couple of hours, and now you can see all the requests showing up on the dashboard. Right, we can actually go to reporting on the left hand side, click on activity search, and we should see all the DNS requests which we tried after connecting our network to, after pointing our network to Umbrella basically. And you can see these are all the requests, but I think the ones which we would be interested is to see the block request, right? So let me go and click on blocked here, apply the filter, and you should see all the blocked requests, right? Remember, in our global block list we have added fort.com, so that's why that is getting blocked here. We can actually click on the right hand side, click on these three dots, and you can click on view full details, and it will give you more information about this particular request, right? It's gonna tell you the DNSA record and external IP address, why it got blocked, right? In our case it got blocked because we added it to the block list, correct? So, but apart from that also there are other links which have been blocked, like probably a malware link. You can see the internetbadguys.com has been blocked and so on. So you can get more information by clicking into the reporting tab. Okay, so the next is what we are going to do is again going back to the topology here. If you see we have actually, let me just close that. Yeah, so this is my Active Directory, correct? It is my Active Directory as well as the DNS server as well, right? And one of the very important component of Umbrella is trying to connect your Active Directory to the Umbrella so that you can share some information with the Umbrella, and it all happens in a very secure way, right? But it's very important to do this because that way you can leverage the intellectual capital of the Active Directory, right? Like, for example, which user is mapped to which PC, right? Or which user is connected to which computer and is part of which group, which domain, and so on. So all that information out of the Active Directory in terms of the logs which are generated out of the Active Directory, right? That information can be very useful for Umbrella to kind of use it in its policies, right? So rather than blindly just doing DNS security, in addition to that, what we can do is now we can configure policies more like a role-based policies, right? So different users can be given different kinds of policies. So to do that, one of the most important thing is if you have an on-prem Active Directory, then you will need to connect it to the Umbrella, correct? So to do that, this is what we are going to start in this particular scenario, right? So we'll get back to our Active Directory here. Sorry, not that one. Let me just close here. So we'll get to the Active Directory here. Let me just go down here, right? So where do you see the Active? We already have a link here, so I'm going to go to that shortcut, but you can also get to this from your start button as well. It's nothing but the Active Directory users and computers, right? Step number one would be basically to create a user here, right? In your domain, right? The domain which we are using is tmelabs.com. So we are going to create a user here. So we'll say new user, and the name of the user should be exact. How I'm going to type here, right? Open DNS, right, underscore connector, right? Open DNS because Umbrella was actually Open DNS before, correct? So they have just retained the same user. So anyway, so that's going to be the full name, right? And make sure you copy it in the this section as well. Let's go to next. Password can be anything. Obviously, it will be defined by your organization's policies. I'm going to use something simple. Okay, so you'll have to repeat that. Okay, and maybe I don't want the user to change the password at next login. I mean, if you want something like this, go ahead, do this again based on your organization's security policies. I'm just going to say password never expires because it's just a lab, right? Click on next. Oh, okay, I think I did not type in correctly. Let's try that again. Okay, and go next. My bad. I think my keyboard is let me give that one more try. All right, went through. I think my caps lock was on there. Anyway, so basically you can put any password you want and click on finish. So there you go, we created that user. Next is we need to, so this is the user which will do all the Umbrella work for you, right? Basically integrating your Active Directory with the Umbrella. So we created a separate user for that. And then we'll basically add this to the right group because it needs certain permissions, right? To do all those integrations. So we'll have to add it to it will need to look into probably the security logs and so on, right? So let's add it to some of these groups which we want. So let's start with there's an event log readers, right? Again, this might, depending on your organization, if you have different groups configured for doing different jobs, you will have to accordingly add it. In this setup, we are going to add it to 3 groups. One will be distributed comp users, and the other one will be enterprise read-only domain controllers. Okay, so that one, right? So basically the idea here is that it should the user which have created should have access to the logs, the security logs which are generated out of AD, and also to the domain controller, like a read-only access to the domain controller, right? So we will basically go and say okay here, and there you go, that got added successfully. So once that has been added, what do we do next? Okay, so the next is we need to run a configuration script, right? So we just remember we have just created the user now, right? The next is, think of it this way, there are apart from creating the user, there are certain other manual tasks which you normally have to do, right? Which is probably setting the right adding right policy to this user, which will in turn be talking to the Umbrella connector, right? Which is the main integration point. So there are a bunch of manual stuff, and if you go to the Umbrella website, it will tell you what are those manual stuff. But instead of having to do that, setting the right permissions and adding it to the right groups and all of those lengthy processes on AD, Umbrella provides you a script to do that, right? So where do you find that script? Let's go to policies, right? Let's go to deployment, configuration, site and Active Directory, right? So come there and you see there is a download option here, and you find the script here, right? So this is basically the one-time script which you have to run, right, to set everything up, right, for your connector to then be installed, right? So let's download that. Okay, so we're going to click on save, and the script is getting downloaded. Let's also download the connector. This is the actual piece. I mean, what we are doing right now is we are building onto it, right? So we are just we just downloaded the script. Let's also download this guy. That's the actual connector which we will install. I'm gonna say save. Okay, so once we run the script, we will basically be setting up everything ready for our connector to be installed, and then the connector is the one which will actually do all the heavy lifting for us, right? We'll check that out. So looks like everything, both of them has been downloaded. So let's probably go down to the we'll have to actually, let me just go down here. Let's open the command prompt in run as administrator. Okay, and we'll have to run that script now, right? So it's a Visual Basic script, so we'll run it with the C script. Okay, and we'll have to get to the location where it is installed, downloaded. So I think it's downloaded in our case in the downloads folder. So let's go there, administrator, downloads, and sorry, not documents, I think it's downloads. and something. Yeah, that's the script, right? So let's go, let's install that. So there you go, it's auto run, it is going to run. It's going to give you an option asking us, double confirming, do you want to auto configure domain controller? I'm going to say yes, right? Do you want to register this domain controller? I'm going to say yes, right? So it's basically going and doing the job for us now. Okay, so we have installed the script now. I think it's time to install the connector, right? So where is our connector? It will be basically in this folder. Sorry, it will be in downloads. So let's go to downloads. Let's go to this zip file. Okay, and yeah, so there you go. That's the file, right? I think we probably better extract this zip file before we do that. So let's do this. Let's extract this file. Let's extract all. I'm gonna say yes, and yeah, there you go. So now let's get into it. Let's go to the setup file. Let's click on yes, run, and it's gonna start installing. Just go with next. There will be, okay, this is the place where you need to put the password of that OpenDNS connector. Right, and let's say next again. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, install. So it'll take a couple of seconds to install it now. There you go, it's installing it. And once it is finished, I think we are good, right? That's the installation, which got completed, guys. Now the next thing is what we have done. We have done with the we have created that user. We have run that initial script for setting up you know, the permissions and groups and all those. Then next is we install the connector itself. There is a DAT file which will be generated. I think it will be somewhere in your C drive, somewhere here, right? So there will be a DAT file which is present here, and this will basically show the what is this? Okay, give me a second. Okay, so the DAT file, this is the file which will actually have the groups. Like for example, you can see there are 3 groups here: engineering, marketing, and sales, right? Just they're trying to simulate a normal enterprise, right? So that's why they have these 3 groups which have been added to this DAT file, and these are the groups which will be synced from your Active Directory onto the umbrella, right? You can change this if you, in case if you don't want all the 3 groups, maybe you want only 1 group to be synced, you can do that as well, right? So the 3 groups, you can also see it on the Active Directory as well. If you go down to the groups here, you can see these are the 3 groups, right? And then the users of that groups also are visible here, right? You can see you can see users like Jack Landon. You have something like Tony Stark, Steve Rogers. Basically, you know, these are the users, right? So basically what we are trying to do is we are trying to send all of this useful information from the Active Directory onto the umbrella, so that then we can define some policies using those, correct? So before, just to make sure that the sync happens, what we could do is probably open up the services.msc over here, right? And then restart the Active Directory services, right? So there you go, that's the Active Directory services. I'm just going to go and restart it, right? Just to make sure that the sync is happening fine, right? So let's go and restart. And when you restart it, it will ask you, it will also restart some other dependent services as well. There you go, DNS server and stuff. So it'll take a couple of seconds, or maybe a few more seconds to get all of that up. Let's wait. All right, so looks like the restart is completed. We should be good to go back to our browser. Let's probably go to the policies section and probably click on DNS policies, right? We already have a policy created earlier, didn't we? So we should actually see, let's click on this and let's go to edit policy here. Okay, and there you go. I think we are seeing it, right? The 3 groups and the 6 users, right? We can actually click here and we should see the 3 groups which were then the DAT file are visible here, and the 6 users are also, you know, basically these are the users which are part of those groups, so they are also imported here, right? Or basically they are present here, so that you can now you know, remember previously we used the network, you know, to create this policy, but now you can actually create policies based on these 80 groups or 80 users, right? So what we kind of ended up doing is with this feature, now you can kind of create different policies based on different users, based on different roles, right? And not apply the same policy for the whole of the network. You can apply certain policies for one group, whereas certain different policies for the different group. So that's what we did as part of the second scenario, where we brought up the Active Directory services, and we saw that we can integrate them with Umbrella and kind of leverage all this intellectual capital out of that into your policies which you create on the Umbrella. Is the AnyConnect roaming client, right? So so basically Umbrella gives you the capability to provide protection both on the network as well as off the network, right? And it provides, or it gives you that capability using what we call as this roaming client. It's a lightweight client. Now you can install, there are two options of doing it. You can either install a standalone Umbrella roaming client, right, as a standalone program, or most of us probably already have AnyConnect, right, because we'll be using a VPN service. So if you are already having an AnyConnect module, AnyConnect setup on your laptop or your workstation, then you can add the Umbrella roaming client as a module to it, right? And that's what we are going to explore in this, right? So again, this is the topology. So we were playing on the AD till now. So let's move on to this workstation, because if you have to install the AnyConnect client, you have to do it on the workstation, right? So we'll go on to the workstation, and we are going to assume that this workstation is probably of a employee, right, who is probably working from home, right? Maybe it's a roaming client, right? So it's probably working from a cafe or working from a different state, right? Whatever it is. Let's assume that he is not inside the campus, is not inside the enterprise. And how do we provide protection in such a case, right? So yeah, the workstation. Let's get to the workstation. There you go. That's the workstation. And what do we do here? So let's start with so in the lab resources, they would have already given you the AnyConnect, so we can try to install that. There you go. We have the AnyConnect. Let's click on setup, and let's try to install. So this one will give you options to install the various modules. You can see AnyConnect is it's actually a very powerful piece of software, right? It has so many modules. You can do like network access, probably for your .1x and so on, and similarly you can do VPN and bunch of things. You can do AMP with it. You can do ICE posture. There are a lot of modules which have been introduced to AnyConnect. In our case, let's select all, which will unselect everything. Let's select the ones which we need, probably the core VPN, though we are not going to use it for now, but let's just add it. And then we will go with the Umbrella roaming security. You see, there is a module which we are interested with. And let's keep the diagnostic one. It will be useful for seeing any accounting related stuff, right? So let's say install, and let's go with next and accept. And now we'll try to install. It'll take a couple of seconds. So okay, there you go, it's completed. That's good. Let's see if it showed up in our tray. Not yet. So what we'll do is we can go and search from here. There you go. We have, I saw Cisco somewhere. Maybe it's here. Okay, there you go, Cisco. Go under that, click on this, and it should show up any minute now. Let's get rid of that. Okay, there you go, right? So we see the AnyConnect client, and you can see roaming security, but right now it is saying Umbrella is inactive. Interesting. So we have to fix that. So I mean, I talked about this when we did our ICE videos as well, right? I think we were trying to install some modules over there too, mainly for BYOD and so on, and we talked about it. Every single module which you need, right, which has to go inside AnyConnect, it needs some kind of a profile, right? Remember, for VPN also you need a profile, and we set that profile using ASA, right? You configure the profile inside ASDM, and then you push that profile down to the workstation. Very similar to that, you need a profile here as well, right? Now the fun thing here is they have made it pretty simple. So let me go on to any Umbrella here. Let's open Umbrella on my workstation. Right now I'm opening it on my workstation. You can do it on your AD as well, but I'm doing it on my workstation. Let's try to log in. Okay, remember the current state says inactive, but we are trying to fix that, right? So we need that profile, like I said, right? Now the cool thing about this is you can simply go down to say I think deployments and roaming computers. Yeah, there you go, roaming computers. And here you should actually get an option. Let's go to the right hand top corner here, right? So there you go, and we should be able to sorry, I think I clicked on something else. Let's go back. Roaming client download, right? So this button, so you'll get this roaming download module profile, right? So you get the profile directly from here, so you can just click that, and it should ask you to save. There you go, we are saving it. Okay, let's go to the location where it got saved, and there you go. Let's copy it, and we have to paste it in a particular place. Where is that? It will be program data, Cisco client umbrella, and there you go. This is the place where we'll have to paste it, right? Let's say continue. So the profile got added now, right? And which means what should happen now is if we go back to our AnyConnect, right? There you go. You can see the change. What happened? Did it disconnect? Okay, maybe it there you go, it's trying to update as well. It's trying to install something, right? But you can see what is happening because we added the profile. It is able to talk to the head end, right? Which is in our case, the head end is nothing but the always AnyConnect module needs a head end. It can be ASA, it can be ICE, right? But yeah, so in this case it is basically talking to our umbrella head end, and it is downloading all the profiles, the correct version, and so on. So let's see, did it finish doing that? If it has done, okay, there you go, right? You can see, now you can see the umbrella is active. Okay, which means all the DNS queries will get forwarded to umbrella, and I believe they are encrypted as well, right? And we should see here, let's refresh this roaming computers, and there you go, right? You can see here it says the workstation, it is protected and encrypted at the DNS layer, and you can see it is it was synced just a few seconds ago, which means our AnyConnect was able to talk to this guy. Okay, so next what do we do? Now the whole thing about this particular use case is we are trying to explore the roaming computers, right? So how do we provide protection for the roaming computers? So let's try to create a policy for that, right? So let's go back to creating our DNS policies, which should be over here. Okay, nothing fancy. We can just reuse the policy which we had earlier, I guess, or we could probably, let's create a new one, right? Let's create a new policy maybe. Let's go to the advanced settings. Maybe this time let's go and enable SSL decryption and enforce safe search, enable IP layer, or do we want this? Or probably not. Let's just let's not enable this for now. We will let me think, do we want it for anything else? Yeah, probably let's not enable all of that for now. Let's actually go back to keeping all of this default. Let's log all the requests. So let's keep the policy very similar to what we had earlier, which is mainly on the it's going to filter mainly on the destination list, right? So there you go. Let's go to the next. And here, this is where I want to really call out, right? The real power of what are we doing right now is because we have this roaming computers here, right? So now you can select the roaming computers as an identity, right? Earlier for our DNS policy, MyLab DNS policy, we were using the networks as the identity. But now because of that AnyConnect client and the, because it has been put in place, we can now use the roaming computers and we can create policies based on that, right? Again, we can keep all of this as default. And we can go back to using probably like moderate, or in fact we can go to something like low as well. You can see it just blocks pornography and a bunch of very few set of websites here or categories, right? Let's go to continue, and yeah, that's fine. Let's not touch this. Let's keep it as is. the global lists which we had created earlier will get applied now, right? Remember, we allowed the 888.com and blocked the 4.com. So that same experience should be now available even for a remote or a roaming laptop as well, right? So let's go to next. The block page, we can keep it as the default one, or you can create something new mainly for the roaming computers. Let's keep it default so that we can quickly power through this scenario. And here I can create a policy called as roaming DNS policy, right? Pretty straightforward, and we will say save. Okay, so it's that simple to create a roaming policy. Right now we can quickly test if you want. So if I select the workstation as the identity, right? If you select if I select the identity as workstation 1, and let's try to probably reach 888.com. That should go through because we have allowed it, right? That's the global list. There we go, it's allowed. But at the same time, if I change this to maybe 4.com, right, and if I run, now that should get blocked, right? And you can see the policy which is getting applied. It is the roaming policy and based on the identity. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so that being said, now what we'll do is we'll also explore. There's something called as SWG agent, right? Secure Web Gateway agent. So secure Web Gateway, think of it as till now whatever we have done DNS policies for networks or probably workstations or laptops or devices which are inside the network, that is on the network, right? Where the DNS server and everything is there, which we did earlier. And then we also explored the off the network use case where you're gonna install an AnyConnect client, which in turn is going to provide the Umbrella roaming module, right? But in addition to that, okay, did I miss my screen? Which is this is the AD and this one is the workstation, right? So this is on the workstation. We installed the AnyConnect client and we explored the roaming scenario as well. And you can see here, when you select the workstation and you select 4.com, it is blocking it, and all of that is happening because on that workstation we have installed the AnyConnect client and we have added the roaming module to it, right? Now there is one more cool thing, which is Umbrella Secure Web Gateway, right? Which can be again deployed using AnyConnect, and Web Gateway really helps you to do proxy, right? So you would have, if you are good with or if you have explored pen testing, or if you have dabbled a little bit in ethical hacking and so on, one of the most important tool which people use is the burp suit, right? So to kind of do a proxy, which is nothing but the proxy is nothing but a device, an intermediary appliance or a device or a small VM, whatever, right? Which will just intercept all the requests which are coming in, right? And it will inspect. And putting a proxy in between really helps you to kind of do the HTTPS decryption as well. So you can completely proxy a connection coming in, look into inside the packet, look if it is harmful, and if it is harmful, drop it, or if it is not harmful, probably recreate the same request and forward it to the actual destination, right? So that kind of capability is available inside Umbrella as part of SWG. And let's go and check where do we enable it, right? So let's go to again roaming computers. So right now where am I? I'm on, actually let's get back to our AD, because I like to do all configurations from the AD. Workstation, I just like to only test stuff, right? Or maybe if I have to download something, only in that case I use the workstation. So let's come to the AD and let's do the configurations from here. Logging in. Okay. So where do we go? We'll go to deployments. We'll go to roaming computers. And yeah, there you go. We went to roaming computers. And we will also, we'll basically go on settings here, right? So when you click on settings, what do you get? You get the you get an option here called AnyConnect roaming client, and here you can see there is something called Secure Web Gateway. This has been added recently. Obviously it wasn't there from day one, This is something which has come in recently. So it's secure web gateway. It will help you to do all it's basically the proxy module for Umbrella, right? So it's enabled. So if it is enabled, I think we should be good, right? So we can actually go to our, again, we can jump back to our workstation just to see if it is enabled. Let's click on this gear icon. Let's go to roaming security, and there you go, right? You can see here, secure web gateway, license is valid, web protection status is protected, right? If you see that, everything seems to be good. Okay. Now, what do we do? Let's come back here, or we are on the workstation, right? Anyway. So what do? We will first create, let's create a web policy, because if you want to do anything with the proxy, right, if you want the proxy to inspect something and do some informed decisions, and you want to create some policies, you have to create web policies. So do that. Again, I'm switching between the workstation and the AD, but you can really do this policy creation from anywhere, right? You just need a browser to do it. So let's go to the web policy here. And the workstation is a bit slow sometimes. Maybe if this is faster, we can do it from here. We will probably have to go to policies and web policy. Okay, there you go. So that's coming up faster, I guess. Let's say, okay, there you go. So that's the web policy which is there. Right now there is nothing. So what we'll do is we'll go and click add. We'll add a new policy here. Okay, there you go. So something came on the screen. First is, let's go and change the name of this rule set name. Let's call this as, I don't know, maybe something like it's for roaming, but we can also probably call this as just web policy, right? We'll call this as web policy. That's the rule name. Rule identities, right? So we want this to be applied to a roaming computer. So let's select that. And so whatever you do here below, right, it is going to be like a global setting for, or it's going to be, it's called as rule set settings. So it's going to be one of those like a global settings, and on the top you can keep on adding different rules, right? And all those rules can inherit these settings. So that's why this is a very modular way of doing it, right? Block page, I'm not going to change it. Let's keep the default one. HTTPS inspection, see, it is disabled here. So we'll go and enable this one. So we'll say enable HTTPS inspection. Intercepted, as you can see, HTTPS traffic is intercepted and decrypted to provide security and rule set enforcement at the URL layer, right? And you can select various categories and stuff. You can see we also need to install a root certificate, which we will do in a while, but for now let's go and save that. Now that you have done all the settings here below, on the top we'll go and create some rules, right? So we'll create, let's go again top. I think I did not save that. Did I save that? I thought I saved that. Okay, let's try that again. Let's add the rule set name, which is web policy, and identity is good. We have added that, and HTTPS was enabled. Okay, so now let's add a new rule, right? So here let's add a rule, and we'll call this as what? Probably a roaming, or wait, let's probably block something, right? So we want to block, say, dating websites, and one of the common dating website is match.com, right? So we'll call this as match.com, and we'll block it. What selections do you want? We can simply inherit inherit rule set identities. When I apply this, what it will do is it will inherit from whatever I have selected here below. Remember, I have selected under rule set identity as roaming computer, so that will get inherited here. And when it comes to category selection, this is the place where you'll have to select your application which you want to block. So I can probably, I don't know, maybe go to content categories and select, I don't know, maybe dating, right? I can select dating over there. And I can also probably go to applications, and I can see if there is something very specific to match, right? So there you go. So match.com also comes under social networking. So let's go and enable that, and let's apply that. Okay, so we have selected all the stuff which we want to, I'm doing it very quickly here, but you can take more time to figure out exactly what and all you want to block, because there might be possibilities that one particular application might appear under two different categories and so on. So you'll have to select everything that applies to you and make an informed decision there, and we'll save it, right? So that's what we want to block today. Okay, so that's done. What else? The next is installing the certificate, right? Because your umbrella is acting as a proxy now, right? Your umbrella is it's basically it's acting as a proxy. So all the requests which are initiated from your workstation, right, will first go to umbrella. Umbrella will decrypt it, look at the packet, and if it wants to drop it, it is going to drop it based on the policy or block it. If it feels that it has to allow it, then it is going to allow it, right? So you really need that certificate, the umbrella certificate, to be installed on your workstation, right? So I'm on my umbrella, so let me go back to my workstation, and I think in this let's go to the folder, the lab resources folder, and here they would have given you the certificate. So let's install that certificate. Open, and let's install it for the local machine so that all the users will get it. Let's say yes. Place a certificate in a certain store. Let's store it in this trusted one, right? Okay, next, and finish. Okay, that looks good. So we'll probably close the browser once the import was successful, right? So that looks good. So I mean, normally the policies take a little bit of time to reach. For the I think it takes around close to 5-6 minutes probably for the policies to come into effect. But let's see if this is already getting blocked. Right, I can see match.com is not going through. Probably it's getting blocked, maybe not. It's going through right now. Okay, so probably the policy has not yet been applied, right, because we just now did it. So let's close that. Let's probably also let's flush out maybe DNS. So I'm running as administrator here, and what we can do is we can ipconfig /flush DNS. Right, there you go. So we flush the DNS as well. Okay, let's give it one more try. I waited for 2-3 minutes. Let me actually close that and open the browser again. And again, let's do match.com. Takes a bit of time. Yeah, it still seems to be going through, so we'll still need a little bit more amount of time to wait. Maybe we can test this out later once we are done with the rest of the scenarios, right? Okay, cool. On to the next use case, which is exploring the virtual appliances, right? Or in short, we call it as umbrella VAs. Now these are nothing but VMs, right? Your normal VMs, which are deployed generally on VMware EXXi or maybe on Hyper-V, right? What do they do? Think about this, right? Think about an enterprise, right, where you have tens and thousands of employees, right? And Umbrella is a cloud service. So Umbrella doesn't have much visibility on what is happening inside the enterprise, apart from the DNS requests, which are generally sent by the DNS server, right? Because remember, we added the Umbrella servers as the forwarders on our local DNS server, right? So apart from the DNS request coming from the DNS server, we don't have any visibility as to which user is trying to access what website, right, or what URL, right, or which application. At the same time, with what IP address are they trying to access? What is the what is the mapping between the IP address and the user, right? And what permission does that user have? Which group does he belong to in the AD, and so on. So we to solve some of this problem, we kind of installed the AD connector earlier, but we really need some kind of a virtual appliance, right, which should reside on-prem, which can then grab all this information, correlate with the AD connector which we installed earlier, and can give a better visibility to our Umbrella to make more informed decisions, right? So we'll start with installing this virtual appliance, right? And we'll see how this all comes together, right? we'll also probably test with a small policy as well. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so what we'll do is let's get to where are we? We are on the Umbrella AD. I think this is fine. So let's get to our deployments and configuration, and here you have an option called Site and Active Directories, right? So let's click on that, and here on the, we have already done this integration before. Remember, we have integrated a domain controller, and we have added the AD connector as well, right? And what we are doing now with the virtual appliance, it is basically going to help, it will correlate and it will work together with this AD connector to give more information to our Umbrella. Okay, so you see this download option, you're gonna click on download option, you get two VMs here, right? Either you can go with VMware or Hyper-V. You can click on the download here, and it will start immediately downloading. It's probably around 300-400 MB. So I have already downloaded it just to speed up the process. See, there you go, just now I downloaded. It is in this tar format, right? So let's probably fix that tar format. What we'll do is we'll go to the CMD window, right? And we will get to, let's see, let's go back. Let's go to users. I think it's administrator and then downloads. Okay, so we are in the downloads folder, and let's untar it. How do you untar it? The command is tar xvzf and the file name. There you go. We have untarred it. Now it is just the OVA file. Okay, so we are going to now install two VMs. Okay, so why two VMs? Obviously for redundancy, because if you want to upgrade one VM, it will take 10 to 15 minutes, and you don't want your network to be down, right? So we basically go with two VM approach for high scalability or reliability, right? So let's minimize that. Let's go to our vSphere. So there is a link for vSphere client here. So we are going to install these two VMs inside that, right? So the default password is provided in the dcloud. So I'm going to use that, and that should get me onto the vSphere in a minute. Okay, there you go, looking good. Let's maximize that. Let's go on the top, let's say deploy OVF template, and here we'll go and browse to the OVF file which we just now downloaded, which is this one. Selected, next, and next. Let's give a meaningful name to this guy. We'll say lab-va-1, right? So this is VA, virtual appliance. It's the first one, so I'm gonna call it as VA-1, go next. We'll go with 10 provisioning, right? Go next again, finish. All right, so that's good. And remember, we have to do the other one as well. So let's wait for a second. Once this is deployed, only then we'll be able to deploy the other one. So that's done. Let's start with the other one. Same process. We'll select the same file. Let's go. The name changes obviously. Let's go with lab-va-2, and let's go next. Thin provision it, and let's finish that. Okay, so that will take another minute. Alright, so both got installed, and I've initiated or I've started both the VMs. So let's go and connect them on the I've powered them on, right? So I've connected them. So let's connect them on console. So that's the first one. Let's grab the second one as well. So that's the second one. Okay, looking good. That's the first one here on the left side. So let's wait for it to stabilize and probably finish the initial installation part and come online, and then we will do the next piece of configuration. Alright, so this is how you will see them once they have stabilized, right, and it's ready to configure. So let's start with configuring both, right? So first click Control B so that it will allow you to configure. It will give you this dialog box asking you to do the password configuration, right? So it's telling you how the default password is structured. It's basically umbrella followed by the organization ID, right? And what is the organization ID? See here, look at my mouse. in the URL of your umbrella, you will have an organization ID over here, right? So you'll have to grab that. So I'm going to say okay, yes, and it's going to ask me for that. So I'm going to say umbrella, and what's the number? In my case, it is 2669436, right? So I'm going to put that, yeah, again, I'll have to add it again. Great. So I'll have to change the password now. So probably what do we go with? Let's use the password which has been given to us in the guide, lab guide. So let's say umbrella serial. Sorry, I think I entered the wrong one. Okay, let's fix that. Umbrella. Okay. Great. Okay, did not match. Okay, give me a second. All right, finally got through. I think I was doing some typos over there. Okay, so we'll have to do the same thing on the right hand side as well. Let's do that. Control V and say yes. Okay, so it's gonna ask you for, scroll to the up, there you go. Okay, there you go, and it's asking for the current password again. Perfect, let's put in the new password. Okay, perfect. See, this is the prompt which you get. Now what you gotta do is you need to configure a couple of things, right? We have just installed the VMs. Now you need to point these VMs to the you have to give a host name basically for the virtual appliance, and you need to configure the IP addresses and the local DNS server, right? So let me show you probably for one, and the other one I will do it while pausing the video. So you'll say config VA name, and the name of the first appliance is lab VA-1, right? I'm going with that. And what will be the interface IP address? So I'll say config VA interface, and the IP address is going to be 198.18.133.101, right? And the mask is 255.192.0, I guess. Yep. And the default gateway is what? 198.18.128.1. Okay. Let's also put in the local DNS server, which is config VA local DNS, and it is 198.18.133.1. That's the local DNS. Okay. So that's the configuration which has to go through. So let me do the same thing on the other side as well. Give me a sec. Right. So both the configurations are completed. Let's type in exit on both the sides, so that everything should turn green now, right? If everything looks good, that's what we need to have. So everything looks green, which means we are good to verify from going to our dashboard. So let's come here. Let's see. So where do we do that? So we should be able to see this on the resume session. Okay. Let's refresh this dashboard here, and there you go, right? Your lab VA1, the lab VA2 imported 2 minutes ago, 1 minute ago, and you can see the IP addresses and everything set up here, right? So yeah, that's mainly it, guys. I mean, see, we have set up the 2 VAs, and our 2 VAs have connected back to the umbrella, right? The next step is basically we need to go and define what we call as a internal network. So you see an option here, internal network. So we'll have to go and define, right? We are basically telling umbrella what are the internal networks it can expect, or the VA can expect the DNS request to come from, right? So we'll create an internal network. We'll basically call this as, I don't know anything, maybe lab network, right? and the IP address, right, which is going to be 198.18.128.0. so that's my internal network. Yours might be different. And the subnet, I think it's basically /18 if I'm not wrong. Let's go there. There you go. Okay, so we have around 16,000 IPs because of that, right? Cool. And site. So like I said, you can basically this is the default site. There is always a default site. You can create multiple sites as well. In our case, we can have in our case we are basically going to use the default site, right? So in our case, if you see our VAs, which are virtual appliances, our connectors, our domain controllers, all are present inside this subnet, right? They're all inside this. So that's why we call that as a site. But if you have in your organization, if you have probably different internal networks, and if you have different VAs and you have different connectors for each of this network, then you would probably have to set up separate sites, right? Depends again, on how you want your policies to affect. In my case, I just have one network and all of my stuff is inside this, and I want the policing also to be kind of uniform and streamlined, so I'm going to use the default site over here. So what else? So we have created the network of the IP addresses and everything is correct. Good. So let's go and save that. Okay, so our site is up, and you see by default it got assigned the default policy. But what we will do is obviously we'll change this policy in a minute. But before that, what else should we do? So if you go back to our workstation here, right? So the workstation right now, we were using this workstation as a roaming agent, right? As a roaming employee or something like that, right? So that's why that's what we were testing till now. Now for the next use case, we'll convert this. We'll not use the roaming, but you don't have to explicitly do much, right? Because I'll actually explain that when we get to that. But what we'll do first is this is our workstation 1, right? And we are going to use this workstation 1 as probably a system which is sitting inside the enterprise, inside that IP subnet which I showed you. So yeah, let's get to my command prompt. Let's get to the Ethernet configuration on my device, which is I can get to it by using ncpa.cpl. Right, this is the primary VLAN, the wired VLAN, the wired connection. Let's go to properties. Let's go to IPv4 properties again. This is the current DNS server, which is the local DNS server. But now we will point this PC to the virtual appliance which we set up. So the virtual appliance can be reached at 101 and 102, correct? So it is 198.18 and 133 and 102. Perfect. I'm gonna say OK here, close. So what I've done right now is I've pointed my workstation towards that, towards the VAs which we set up. Okay, perfect. We can double confirm that. We'll go to this guy and we'll say ipconfig/all, and there you go. You can see the DNS, or basically the DNS changes replicating or reflecting. We can see the VAs showing up over there. Now, what really happens is, you might have a question that okay, we also have this guy, which is the AnyConnect agent, and we also have that AnyConnect agent also has the Umbrella roaming security, right? Module installed into it. Don't you think that will come into effect? And the short answer is no. So when your workstation is behind a virtual appliance, like in our case right now, the Umbrella roaming security module will go silent, right? That is, it will no longer forward the DNS request to Umbrella. Rather, it understands that okay, now I am actually behind. It understands that the PC or the workstation is behind a virtual appliance, so it will let the virtual appliance do its thing. Right, so it does that by doing ns lookup to I think debug.opends.com and seeing the response out of it. But whatever it is, since we are behind the virtual appliance now, this guy will not come into play. That is the Cisco AnyConnect mobility plan. So I can close that. That guy will obviously come into play when we go off the network, right? When you're going off the network, when you're probably traveling, you're in a coffee shop or something, and you're trying to access the network via VPN or something like that. In fact, sorry, not VPN. When you're trying to access the internet from a coffee shop, that's when that particular roaming client will basically come into play. Okay, cool. So I think we're all good from this configuration. The only configuration needed here was to point our workstation towards the VAs which we set up. Now we should be good to go and create some policies. Let's go back to our simplest policies, which are your DNS policies, right? So let's get back to that policy and let's create a policy, right? So we have okay, let's, instead of tinkering the existing policy, let's create a new one. We'll call this guy as, okay, let's enable all of this. Let's enable probably encryption and IP enforcement, safe search. Let's log all the requests. Let's go next. Here, this is where, this is where all the stuff which you did till now in this session will actually come into play. You see there is an option here under identities. What and all have we explored? We have explored network devices. We have explored we have explored what else? Roaming computers we have explored. We have also looked at how you can do role-based, because you have the AD users and groups also showing up here. But now what you can do is based on sites, right? You can put some policies for a particular site. Like in our case, what site do we have? This one, default site. So let me select that, go next. And let's keep that as is. Okay, let's go with moderate. We have done this a couple of times now, so I think this should be pretty simple. Let's keep this also default. Let's probably create a new destination list, right? We want to block something. So what do we name this? We'll name this as default, because it's the default site block list, right? I'm going to name it that way. And I can give anything. Let me give something like vimeo.com, right? So let's say I don't want the users who are in the enterprise, who are the employees, probably I don't want them to access this particular video platform, right? So I can just add it over here, and let's save that. There you go. It got added to the default site block list, right? You can see it's available here. I'm going to go with next. And file inspection, let's keep all of this default. Block page, I can go with a new one. I'm going to speed up this and going to use the default one. Let's create a new name for this policy. What do we call this? We'll call this default site policy. Okay. Default site, that's a spell over. Okay, there you go. So that's fine. And let's scroll down and we're going to save that. Okay. Which is good. So now is the time to test, right? So let's go back to this workstation. Let's probably flush out any DNS entries we might have. Let's probably do that. So we'll say ipconfig flush DNS. As I've told before, it takes a few minutes, probably like 5 minutes for the policies to because whatever you're doing, right, when you're creating a policy, you're creating it probably on the front end of your umbrella, right? But that policy has to propagate throughout the global infrastructure of umbrella, right? Umbrella has a huge point of presence all over the world, right? So many data centers and so much infrastructure in the background, so it has to propagate everywhere. So it might take some time, but let's still try our luck. Let's go with vimeo.com. Okay, it's still going through, so we will probably have to wait for a couple of minutes. Let's see, let's wait for a couple of minutes and see how that goes. If it takes too much time, we can test it later as well. Alright, so we're waiting for 5 minutes. Now let's give it one more try. Let's go to the browser. Let's go with vimeo.com, right? I'm doing it on which one? I'm doing this on the workstation one. Okay, so let's try. And there we go. Site is blocked. Okay, so probably we see some information here under the query screen. Nothing much, but still it basically means that it got blocked because because of the configuration which we just now did in the default site, right, as a default site policy. All right, cool. Is setting up a network tunnel. Let me actually bring up the topology here. Yeah, so there you go, that's the topology, right? So the next one, what we're trying to do is, we've got a workstation 2 here, right, and it is its default gateway is the CSR router. So what we want to do is, we want to get to a point where we can use the cloud, or we can use the umbrella as a firewall, right? Most of our enterprises, we use a lot of different types of firewalls, right? ASA and Firepower, Palo Alto, Checkpoint, and a lot of those different types of firewalls, right? How about using a cloud delivered firewall, right? So if that is your use case, then this is what we need to do. So in this simple setup, we have a workstation and you have the CSR router as your default gateway, and we'll be setting up a tunnel, a network tunnel from the CSR, right, to Cisco Umbrella, so that all the traffic, right, will be encrypted and sent up to the umbrella, and on the umbrella we'll make a decision if we need to if we have to do some L3 or L4 inspection, right? Or I believe you also have a little bit of layer 7 inspection or application visibility put into right now, right? So we can explore that in the coming section. Okay, so let's start with creating this tunnel. Pretty simple actually. We will go to our deployments here on the left hand side, and network tunnels here, right? Right now you shouldn't see any tunnels, right? It should be empty. There you go. So we'll start by creating a simple tunnel. The tunnel name can be anything. I'm going to call this my lab tunnel, right? So can be any name. Type, what type of a device? So there is nothing specific for CSR, so we'll pick something which is closer to it, which is ISR, right? And the tunnel ID, okay, the tunnel ID is needed. Now tunnel ID can be anything technically. You just need to make sure that you use the same thing on both the sides. So so let's put in some tunnel ID. Let's actually use the same thing. Let's say my lab tunnel, right? So we'll use that as the tunnel ID. Passphrase. Our CSR routers are almost already configured for us in this dcloud, so we'll use the same thing what they have used. It's basically a pre-shared key, right, which is needed for your IPsec, your IKE and IPsec communication, right? So let's use umbrella is number 1. Okay, so there you go. Let's repeat it. Sweet. Okay, there you go, done. So we'll save this, and it will take a couple of seconds. There you go. So it's asking me to copy the passphrase. Probably let me copy it, but actually I'll not be needing it, so I'm not going to copy that. Whereas what will I actually need is, let's click on this tunnel, and there you go. This tunnel ID is what we'll actually need, right? So let's keep this page open here. It's fine. What we'll do now is, let's actually get to our putty. Okay, so there you go, we have the putty here. Let's see. Okay, so can I increase the size of this? Give me a minute. Let me check if I can increase the size. Okay, maybe that might work. Let's try. So we have CSR. Let's load the CSR and let's open this guy. Okay, that did not go through. Let me actually close this and try it again. Maybe that might help. So we have putty here. Let's load this up. And okay, still did not work. Let me try to fix that. Give me a second. Alright, that's much better. So we'll log in as admin, and the default password is given to us in the guide, so we'll use that. Probably not. Let me try that again. Okay, there you go. So we are inside the CSR device. Actually got full screen here. Okay, so we'll configure the tunnel on the CSR now, right? So let's do conf t, and let's do interface tunnel 1. So the tunnel has already been configured for us. We'll look at the configuration in a bit, but let's go and do the additional configurations which are still needed. right? So tunnel 1, and we'll have to put the tunnel destination. Now the tunnel destination is nothing but we have to put the destination IP address for the tunnel, okay? So in our case, we'll have to put the Umbrella's head end as the destination IP. But like I said, Umbrella has presence all over the world. Like there are a lot of point of presence. So we need to probably pick the one which is closer to us. I'm based out of India, so I'm gonna pick something which is closer to India, which is Singapore. There is a head end in Singapore. I'm gonna pick that. But you guys probably can pick something which is closer to you if you are trying to replicate this. And you'll find this head end IPs right on the Umbrella's documentation or also in the lab guide as well. So I'm going to go with like 146 probably .112.113.8. So that's the head end IP for Singapore. So I'm going to use that. Exit out. Let's also go inside the crypto IKv2 profile. Profile. I think it's named as Umbrella, so I'm going to get into that. And in here, we'll have to put that pre-shared key. Pre-shared key has already been put. We need to put the identity, right? So we'll say identity local and email. And what is the identity here? This one, the tunnel ID. So let's copy that. Let's come here. Let's paste it. Okay, there we go. So that's done. So we can end this and we can do copy run startup. So now the tunnel will start negotiating and it will start coming up. So it will take a couple of minutes for it to come up on the dashboard. So let's clear the screen. Okay, we can't probably. Okay, so we will look at the configs here. Let's look at the status of the tunnel. Show crypto IKv2 SA, and there you go. It's still the status is probably negotiating, as you see there. Still not up. Still negotiating. So let's give it some more time. Whereas let's look at the configurations. Maybe show run section crypto IKv2. Let's look at that. Let's term length 0 here. Okay. So there you go. That's the configuration, right? Pretty straightforward, VPN or IPsec and IKv2 configuration. You can see over here, we have the peers defined for all the POPs. This is what I was telling, right? You can use any POP which is closer to you. The one which I'm using is the Singapore. Where is it? Singapore, I think it should be. Yeah, there you go. This is the one which I'm using, but you guys can probably use anything. And this is the identity which we just now added, right? So that's IKv2 side of things. We can also look at IPsec. And there you go, that's the IPsec configuration which has gone in. Probably let's also look at the tunnel configuration itself. Show on interface tunnel 1. And there you go, that's the tunnel configuration. Okay. Now let's see if our tunnel has come up by now. Let's see, so to show crypto IKv2 SA. Okay, probably not. Let's probably wait for a few seconds. Okay, so this is a bit tricky. Looks like there is something broken in the dcloud lab, at least the instance which I was running till now, and I kind of found the issue. So if you see show crypto IKv2 SA, the session, or basically the IKv2 session, is always stuck in this particular state. It is never going to the ready state. And if you look at it, the reason is because this CSR device doesn't seem to have connectivity to the Umbrella head end, right? If you scroll a bit top here, we can see the Umbrella head end IP address which we used. We used the, what did we use? Let's look at the tunnel. Show run interface tunnel 1. So this is the one which we used, right? This IP address. So let's try to ping it, and it will actually not go through, right? So it looks like something is broken probably upstream of this CSR, which we really don't have access to, because we really don't have access to any of that on the dcloud. So I kind of booked one more lab and I tried the same thing, and there it seems to work. So it looks like that issue was very specific to that specific lab. So maybe in case if you see this as well, maybe try to end that current lab and probably spin up a new lab. And here I can see, you see this is the same IP address. I did the entire configuration on this guy, and if I do a ping, there you go, the connection goes through, right? So I've set up the tunnel, I believe. So we should see show crypto IKv2 SA here, right? There you go. You can see it shows as ready, and we can also probably see. We can also now probably go and check the dashboard of this particular instance. So this is the AD. So let me go down here and let's refresh this, right? So let's come back to the tunnels here. I think probably the name has changed because I set up a new tunnel on this new instance, but you can see it is active now, right? The tunnel has been established. So that's mainly what I wanted to show with this piece, where we set up a network tunnel, right? We set up a tunnel between the CSR device, which is the default gateway of our LAN network here. We have set up a tunnel, encrypted tunnel to the Umbrella cloud, or basically the Umbrella hidden IPsec tunnel, so that now we can use that tunnel to basically send traffic and then make decisions on the cloud and basically use the cloud umbrella as a firewall. All right. Okay. Section of this advanced umbrella lab, which we have been playing around. So we already set up a network tunnel, right? Let's look at the topology. So we set up a IPsec tunnel from where? From the CSR, which is the gateway of this network. We set up a tunnel from the CSR onto our cloud. Now I think we are good to go and set up firewall policies, right? Because all the traffic is anyway getting tunneled to the cloud. So we can basically deploy some firewall policies on the cloud, and the traffic will get we can basically block, or we can define certain firewall rules on the cloud, right? So let's try that. So what do we do? Let's verify if our tunnel is up. Let's go back to our tunnel, which we set up earlier. We should probably go top, scroll it a bit. Yeah, let's go to deployment, and here we go, network tunnels. So there you go, our tunnel is running, right? This is the tunnel, and you can also see it probably from the putty, right? You can do show crypto IPsec tunnel. You can see it's up and good. So now we have we are not using workstation 1, we're using workstation 2, because this section forms a network in itself, right? So we have what we are trying to do is we'll generate some traffic from workstation 2, and we'll deploy some firewall rule on the cloud, and we'll see if that firewall rule gets applied on this guy, right? So right now on this workstation 2, we have defined our CSR device as the default gateway. We can actually go and check that. So let's go to the workstation 2, probably open up CMD, and I can do ipconfig, right? And there you go. So 198.168.10.1, that is the default gateway of CSR router, right? And all the traffic which is coming on the CSR router, it gets tunneled on the IPsec tunnel onto the cloud, right? So what's a simple use case which we can do here is we have a website called port quiz, right? So this one will tell us if a particular port is open or not, right? So we can supply this particular web portal or website with any port we want to test. Let's say we want to test with 444, right? And there you go, it is telling us that you have reached to us outbound on the port 444, and it is open, right? Because this website is loading and it is showing us this, it means that it is open. So what we'll do now is we'll deploy a firewall rule, right? And to do that, let's go to policies on our umbrella. Let's go to firewall policy, okay? And make sure that for the default route, always make sure that you have your logging enabled, right? So that way all the new rules which you create will also have the logging enabled, right? So make sure that is good. Let's create a new, let's create a new firewall rule here, okay? So, or actually instead of creating a new one, yeah, actually it's fine, we can create a new one. All right, so what we'll do is we'll say port block, which port we want to block. We want to block 444, right? It is currently open, but we want to block the port 444 outbound. And you have all these options, protocol, applications, and all these things which you can block, but we will just go down here to the destination ports, and we'll say specify port, and we'll specify a port number, which is 444, right? Good. So let's scroll down. You also have an option to define temporary rules. That means, the rules which will be valid only during the certain timestamp which you define here, right? So that's pretty cool as well. But in our case, let's not use that feature. Our whole idea is to create a rule which will block 444 port, right? So that is done. What else? Probably where is the rule action? So let's come down. There you go. There's a rule action, and we'll block the traffic, right? We don't want to allow on port 444. We want to block it. And logging has been disabled, so let's enable that as well. Okay. So that's looking good. What we'll do now is, let's see on the top, everything looks good, right? So let's come down and let's save this guy. Okay, there you go. The port, the rule got applied. So now what we'll do is, let's come to the same workstation, right? This page was loading earlier, but now what I'll do is I'll copy this guy, open in a new tab, and if everything has gone correct, this should not load. Oh, it's still loading. Okay. So probably it will take a few minutes for the rule to be applied. Okay. So maybe now it should work. What we'll do is we'll close the browser and open it again, right? Let's try that. Okay. So it's nothing but port, yeah, and the port number is going to be 444, right? There you go. So it is no longer loading, right? If you go to your Umbrella dashboard and if you refresh it here, you will basically see that you'll see the count here, right? You can see the count, and you can see there are 21 counts here. At the same time, I also want to show you that if I just grab the same link, right, open it in a new tab, but this time change the port to something else, because we have blocked only 444. So let's change it to 445, and there you go. That works, right? Because we have blocked only 444, only that is not going through. You can see here it's still trying to connect but not going through, and as a result the heat count is increasing on the Umbrella page, right? Cool. So hope that was useful, guys. This was like a huge series, a huge set of use cases. If you have a CCO ID and if you have access to dcloud, go and check it out. You can give it a spin as well and learn how to deploy Umbrella, one of the coolest technologies out there. Has a wide range of, I think there are a couple of other topics which I have probably skipped in this video. The other two things which you can explore as a post learning after this is probably go a little more deeper in the secure web gateway, right? Because you can do things like SAML and stuff with SWG. You also can explore some of the new features which have come into Umbrella, like DLP, right? So data leak protection, right? So you can explore those features as well, right? So, but I hope this has given you a good base and kind of given you a good idea about what Umbrella does and how it really benefits an enterprise, right? And thanks a lot for staying with me on this one, and come back for more videos. Have a good one, guys. Bye. And I think we'll get to see a lot of cool features in this particular session. So remember, we talked a little bit about Active Directories, right? Probably in the second section, where we kind of integrated the Active Directory with Umbrella. We'll actually get to realize the benefits of that in this session, right? And we'll see some very good use cases in this one, right? So we'll mainly concentrate on secure web gateway and the whole policies and all the cool benefits of that particular feature. Okay, cool. So let's jump on to the Active Directory, right, where we have the Umbrella open. So first thing what we are going to do is we are going to do the SAML configuration in this session, right? The main use of this is, what we are trying to accomplish is we want to give different policies depending on who logs in, right? So more like a role-based access. So a user 1 connects to the network, he has to be given a set of policies, right? A set of umbrella policies, whereas a different user logs in, he has to be given something different, right? So we'll do that. Yeah, so let's go to the SAML configuration. So SAML, I think you guys probably know, it's a security assertion markup language. It's a way of authenticating users without actually doing the authentication yourself, right? That's what we are going to actually do with this one. Looks like I have a SAML configuration already set up. Let me actually delete this so that we can do it from scratch. So yeah, so this is how you will have without any SAML configuration initially set up. Like I said, in SAML, in simple terms, you can go and read about this, but in SAML, in simple terms, you have some specific specific personas involved. You have something called a service provider, you have IDP, and so on. So just follow along. If you don't understand SAML, it's fine, but just understand that it's a way of authenticating users by kind of directing the authentication to someone else, right? So something on that sort. So let's add here, and we have, see, these are some of the identity providers. We'll use obviously our Cisco's Duo, but all of these other things are supported as well. Let's go next. So here, Cisco provides an option to download the umbrella metadata. So if you download this, it will be a XML file. So you'll have to download this XML file generally, and you have to fill it with your SAML information, right? All the information, certificate information, and so on. So people who deploy SAML on a day-to-day basis will be well versed with that. So you have to download this, edit it, and then in the next step we have to upload it, right? But since this is a lab, that file has been already created for us, so you really don't need to download. You can just go to the next step, and here you can just upload the file which is given to us in the lab resources folder, and you see that's the file. And if I have one open, maybe I can show you. Yeah, there you go. This is how it looks, right? Sorry, this is the one which you get from downloading, I believe. Maybe we can also have a look at the one which we just now uploaded. So let's see. Okay, this is the one which we uploaded. So this is how the SAML metadata file looks like, right? So it has all the information about the certificate and blah blah, like how the authentication should be done and so on, right? So anyway, so let's move on. The next is so we have uploaded the file. Okay, so now it's asking us, should we authenticate the web proxy users, right? Should we authenticate the users who are connecting to a network on a daily basis, weekly basis, whatnot, right? It could be anything. You could, if you want to keep it weekly, you can keep it weekly as well, not an issue. Just go and click on save. So when you do that, you get an option here to to kind of test the configuration, right? So you can click on test and redirect. So this is just giving you a idea about how it's going to end up with. So let's log in with the valid user which has been provided to us, right? One of the user is J London, right, at tmelabs.com. Okay, so that's our user, and we'll log in with the password. Let's see if this goes through. Yeah, there we go, logging you in, right? So see, it is going to the AD, it is authenticating, and it is coming back. So all that integration has already been done, and that's mainly taken care by your Duo, right? You don't have to do anything with that. But you can see here, it says that SAML authentication or configuration was tested successfully, right? So this is good. So that's what we did. If you want to change this back to probably daily, you can do that as well, right? And you can save that. Okay, so that's your SAML configuration. Next is probably we can quickly go down to the users groups here on the left hand side, just to make sure that the AD is actually being used for the authentication. So you can click on the top here. So on the user provisioning section, and you can see here it's asking either you can also upload like a CSV file. You will need to export user object from your Active Directory to CSV file and manually upload the CSV file with all the users and user information for the SAML. Or in our case, we are basically doing AD based provisioning, right? This we have already integrated our ADs to Umbrella, so this would take care of it. Okay, so let's save that. That's fine. Next is what? Let's also, you will need the root certificate to. So I think in my case, so if you look at the diagram, what we are trying to do is, let's go back to the topology, right? What we did in the previous, I think for this particular section, there are two important things. One is integration of Active Directory with Umbrella, which we did in the second section. And the second thing is, we are actually concentrating on this section of the lab now, right? This small section. So the Active Directory integration is important. Second thing is, you also need the network tunnel, which we set up, right? In the previous session, right? We set up the network tunnel from the CSR router all the way back to Umbrella. So these two things are important. So finally, we'll be testing it out of this workstation, right? All the policies which we're deploying, we'll be testing it from here. So the traffic, it will basically come from workstation 2, come to the CSR, and from the CSR, it will get encrypted in IPsec tunnel and be sent to Umbrella. Okay, cool. So coming here, next is, that's why one of the important step is on this workstation, right? You need to install the root certificate of Umbrella, right? We have installed it, but if you haven't, I think I installed it a while back, but if you haven't, you can install the root certificate. Okay. Cool. So, okay, and where do you get the root certificate? You see there is an option here on the left hand side. You will get the root certificate. You can download it and import it into the workstation and the browser. Right, there you go. That's the root certificate. Okay, so the next is, let's close this deployments for a while. Let's go to the policies. So in the policies, this is going to be a little lengthier policy. So we will first create the components. Okay. So let's start from probably this one. Let's create the selective description list, right? So what does this mean? A selective decryption list, right? So this basically does the job of creating a list of URLs which will not be decrypted. So what are we trying to do here? I mean, we are talking about a secure web gateway, right? So it really can't be accomplished without using a proxy, right? So the traffic will be sent on the tunnel and will be sent directly to the Umbrella cloud, and on the Umbrella we are going to decrypt the traffic. But if you don't want that decryption to happen, say for some financial websites, then you can create a list, right? So I can go here, click add, and I can give a name. Let's call this as SVG, let's call it finance, right? So because I don't want the decryption to happen for that, right? So let's add here, and you get an option here, financial institutions, close. So we have added that, and we can save it. Correct. So we have done that. We will basically, right now we are creating the policy components. We'll use this later when we create the web policy, right? We created one of the important component. Next, let's go to tenant controls. Right, so tenant control basically I can use when most of the SaaS applications, right, like say Google. Actually, let's click on here. Let's see. Only then we'll get to know. So when you click on that, it is asking us. You can see here on the top as well, right? They're given the example: Microsoft 365, Google, Slack, right? So all these SaaS applications, right? You have both a corporate account. Most of us techies, right? We probably use these products in our day-to-day life, right? So we use it both for personal use cases as well as we use it for corporate, right? So our corporates also probably have accounts with these SaaS. Now, how do you restrict users from not using or not logging into their personal Gmail on their work laptop, if that is your use case? How do you restrict users from not logging into Microsoft Office 365 using their personal Gmail, right? So such kind of use cases, if you have, then this would really help you, right? So that's where the tenant control comes into play. Okay. So yeah, so we can basically call this, I don't know, maybe let's call this. So we'll basically create a tenant control only for Google, right? So let's call that as Google tenant, right? So let's call that, and let's click on Google here. And what we are going to do is the domain. So what we are telling is, if the user is logging tmelabs.com, right? So in your organization might be something different, right? So you can obviously use that domain. So what we are doing is this the restriction or the blocking here happens based on the domain. So if I try to do, I don't know, bitsplease@gmail.com, then it won't go. If I only log in to an account using this domain only, then it would basically go, right? So I can add that. So I added that domain now for Google, right? Similarly, you can play around with the others as well. So I'm going to save that, right? Cool. So we added the controls. Next, let's go to the destination list. Okay. So we can create some destination lists which will be useful, right? So one is basically, let's go and add. So we'll add, what do we add? We'll add something like, so we are doing secure web gateway, right? And let's put a block list first. So what are the block lists? So let's say I want to block people from using the gambling websites, right? So let's do www.gambling.com, right? And I don't want to restrict the whole gambling.com. I want to restrict specific parts to it. So gambling.com/guides, right? And maybe I can add one more, which is again same thing, www.gambling.com, but say the news, right? So I don't want my employees or basically in my network to basically connect to this particular site and look into all these things, right? So yeah, so that's basically our and also remember, switch from DNS policies to web policies here, right? Else it's not going to work. So switch, change. I think in the older Umbrella, probably a few months back, we did not have that drop down, but I think now we have it. So make sure that you select the right one. So yeah, that's pretty much good. So let's save that. Okay, so you can see the web policy come up there. So that's good. Maybe we can also add one more, which will probably, I don't know if I'll use this, but let's see. Let's call this as all the websites which I want people to use, right? So give me a second. Yeah. Or maybe this also could be something which I want to block. Could be anything. So I'll say SPG_education probably. Yeah, so, or let's change from education to say personal, right? So if you don't want people to spend their time, I don't know, again, change this from DNS to, we'll change this to web policies again, right? And let's change this to youtube.com, right? If I don't want people to open up YouTube, just an example, right? Or say github.com, right? Maybe I'm conducting a hackathon and I don't want people to like open up code from GitHub, right? So yeah, use cases. So yeah, you can do something like that, and you can again, go and save it. I think that should work. All right. The next would be, so we are done with the destination list. You can add any number of them to test it out. Let's probably go to the security settings here, right? So security settings for your default policies, right? You're just making sure that all the security settings are selected so that you can do all your malware and threat detection and all of that. So let's quickly have a look at that. There you go, right? So if you probably look at, so these are the default settings. So if you go to the default web settings, you will see all these guys selected, right? So which means all the web policies which we create will have these settings in them. You can see here, this default settings are applied to the web policy. It means any web policy you create will have these as default, right? Just make sure that is selected. That way you don't have to manually create every time you create a new policy, right? It will come bundled in automatically. So what else? I think we are good. So we can now go, I think we have created all the components which we needed. Now we can go to the web policy. And I don't know, okay, so we don't have any web policy yet which we are using. So let's go and create a new one. It's a bit slow. Yeah, there you go. So let's give it a name, right? So start with the rule set name here. Let's go and let's call it as SVG web policy. Okay, let's give a big name. Remember to save that. What else? So we are given a name, and then let's scroll down. What else we need? SAML. See, we enabled SAML earlier. We have to enable it explicitly here as well. So there you go. I'm gonna say enable and save it. Next, identities. Identity is important, right? So let's go and enable that, and let's select a couple of things here, I guess. One is we want to kind of apply these settings, or we want to apply this policy only to a specific user, which will be Jack London, right? So user who is called Jack London, with whom the workstation 2 is basically we are going to log in, right? So we're going to save that. There will be one more identity, which is nothing but the tunnel as well, because we know that the traffic is going to come on the tunnel which is coming from the CSRV, right? So we're gonna save that guy as well. So there we go, 2 identities got applied. Then let's see the tenant controls. Okay, there you go, right? So remember we created the tenant control for Google, right? So we will have to select that. See, Google tenant, there you go. So this one. So now we are preventing people from logging into Google with their personal email. We'll test it out, don't worry. Yeah, so that's pretty much fine, I guess. What else is needed? So we created the tenant control, HTTPS inspection, right? So let's go and enable that. So that's enabled. Remember we created the decryption list with SVG Finance. We do not want people to decrypt your financial transactions, so that's why I've selected that. So which means Umbrella will not try to decrypt that. So that's good. Okay, then security settings. Let's see what do we have here, right? So security settings, make sure everything is selected. See, it came here selected already because we had enabled it in the default policy or the default security settings, right? File analysis, maybe we can try that as well. So in file analysis, I can enable threat grid, right? Threat grid is basically a sandboxing way. So whenever Umbrella finds a particular file to be malicious, or it thinks it is malicious, it will basically forward it to threat grid for kind of sandbox execution, more like on the pen testing kind of approach, right? To kind of weed out the malicious files. And make sure you select the correct region. So think about the whole GDPR and all of those policies in place. My dcloud is probably in Europe, so I'm going to use Europe as the sandbox region, and it is telling that once you select that, you can't change it, so make sure you select the right thing. Cool. What else? So I think the other thing is, let's see, did we do everything? Okay, there is file control. So in the file control, if you want to block a certain types of file, like for example, I can block just ISO, right? I can block people from downloading or uploading ISO, so that's a good use case as well. So I can save that. Okay, so we did a bunch of things, I guess. So it looks good. Let me scroll top. Did I enable HTTPS inspection? I thought I did. I didn't do it. Let me try that again. Okay, that's enabled. Why is it showing disabled over there? That's weird. Maybe I'll have to refresh it. Okay, so that's fine. We'll come back and check that. Coming to the add rule, right? So make sure you add the rules here. So rule number 1, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to do a bunch of things. So I'm gonna probably call it as let's call it as rule number 1. It's fine. Add the identities, right? We'll inherit the identities which we already defined below, so you don't have to again define. We defined it here. We are going to use that. And destinations. So for destinations, what we are going to do is, let's see. Yeah, for the destinations, let's try to block maybe dating websites, right? Let's go to probably dating websites here. There you go. So there you go. We have selected that. Let's apply that. So we added one category. What else do we want? We can also block probably, let's not select gambling, because remember we have already added gambling to that other destination list, I believe. So we'll take care of it in that section. But if you want any other category, you can add, right? The other one is probably, let's look at applications. Category would be social networking, I guess. Probably, where is social networking? It should be somewhere below. scroll down. Oh, there we go, social networking, and inside this we can search for probably Facebook, and we can block it. Right, there you go. So we're gonna grab Facebook here. Okay, so that's good. We can also probably go back and also remove maybe WeTransfer, right? So we have WeTransfer in this one. So there you go, that is, but let's go inside and let's find it. Okay, so there you go, WeTransfer uploads. So let's just prevent people from going to WeTransfer website and uploading any files to it, right? So yeah, that's fine. So we have selected a bunch of things here. I think we are happy. We can go and hit the save button here. Okay. Okay, maybe I think we did not add the destination list. Let's edit that, and let's also add the another destination list. See, you have destination list here. And remember, we want to block these. These were the gambling websites, so let's block it, and so let's add that as well, right? Cool. So that would basically bring a total to 1 category, 1 destination list, and 3 applications which we are blocking. Okay, cool. So we can also add one more rule probably, just because there is a very good feature. If you click on the drop down here, you will find apart from block, you also find an option called isolate, right? So this is a very interesting option where if you don't want to do the complete browsing on your browser, rather you want the browsing to be done on a virtual browser which is hosted on Umbrella, then this is a good option, right? So again, we can inherit the identities. Let's save that. And for the destinations, this time we can select the other destination, the personal one which we had created for GitHub, YouTube, and all of that. So I can select that. Yeah, I think it should be fine, right? Save that. So yeah, that will reflect over there. I still need to enable the HTTP inspection. So let's go back and see if it has been enabled. Sometimes it just doesn't show up. So let's see. Let's go back here. Let's go back to the web policy again. Okay, there you go. So we've got that. Okay, inspection is still disabled. So let's try to enable that. Okay, let's come there. And the finance, all of that is good. So let's save. Okay, so now it's enabled. Awesome. Cool. That's fine. All right, so time to test it out. Let's also verify that our tunnel is still up. Where is our tunnel? The network tunnel, which is coming in from the CSR device. Make sure that tunnel is up. Yes, that is up here. So let's move on to the other machine, which is our workstation where we'll be testing out. Yeah, so let's start with browser. Let's open Google Chrome. So remember, I've already imported my root certificate in this one, right? So let's go to cisco.com. And okay, so because I had already signed into this one before, it looks like the authentication is not being prompted. Let me see if I can reset this machine. Give me a second. Alright, so it looks like the reset did not help. That's because if you go back here, if you see the SAML, right, we have enabled SAML, but if you go to the SAML configuration, which is probably under deployment over here, we have asked Umbrella to authenticate users only once per day, right? Re-authenticate web proxy users daily. So I already tried out this lab for playing around earlier, so that's why I'd already authenticated myself, and that's why it's not asking me once again, right? But you're not messing up much. The first time when you come and when you put in say cisco.com, it will redirect you to the dual login. So you put the dual login of that user and you will be authenticated, right? Only then you'll be able to access the network. So considering that goes through, we can still test out a lot of other stuff. So what do we do first? Yeah, so the first thing probably is okay, so once we're done with cisco.com, let's see remember we put a block for the dating website, which is match.com. Let's see what happens with that. Right, there you go, it's getting blocked, right? So the dating website is getting blocked, so our policy is working fine. Next is, remember we also put the blocks for the gambling, right? So let's see gambling.com. Let's go to gambling.com here. Okay, did I put in the wrong spelling? Okay, yeah, it's gambling, so that's bad. So it's gambling.com. Okay, there we go. So that's gambling.com, and remember we put in the policy. I mean, we want the gambling.com to open, but we just don't want a couple of these sublinks to not open. Like for example, gambling news. So when I go to that, it should block, right? So that is working as well. Next is, let's try to download an ISO file. Remember we did the file control policy, right? So we put ubuntu.com, that is desktop. If you go to that particular place, you can actually download an ISO file here, right? So if I try to download an ISO file, you can see here it will immediately redirect to a block page again, right? Because we tried to download an ISO file, right? So that's working. Next is, let's look at the tenant controls which we talked about, right? So if you go to something like gmail.com here, right? So let's go to gmail.com. Okay, this is coming in, I think, I don't know, maybe different language. So let's translate it. It's coming in Dutch, right? So let's translate. Okay, so let's use a email ID with @gmail.com and let's see what happens, right? So when you go with next, it will immediately tell you that this account is not allowed to log into the network, right? The reason being we used @gmail.com and not @tmelabs.com, right? So our policy of tenant control is working as well. You can try the same thing with Microsoft and Slack, right? And maybe future integrations will come with many more applications as well. Okay, so the same, most of whatever we did here, you can again go to Umbrella and you can go to the report section and see the reports. You can see the activity over there, right? Next is, let's look at that selective decryption which we talked about. Let's go to a website like, I don't know, maybe CNN, right? Like our news website. And this one should actually get decrypted, right? Because remember, we have told Umbrella not to decrypt only the finance websites. So if you go to your certificate here on the top, right, if you click on that, you will see there is an option. Let's click on the certificate and let's look at the certificate, and you can see here it is issued by Umbrella, Cisco Umbrella, right? So which means that the traffic is actually hitting Umbrella, and then Umbrella is decrypting and then sending the request again, sending the request again to your actual destination, right? The same thing if you try to probably open another website, say the banking website or the financial website, right? Like for example, Ing is a bank, right? If you try to open that website, you should actually see, or if you again come back here and if you click on the lock option, let's go here, and if you see here, right, you can see that it is not showing Cisco, which means that we are not decrypting this traffic, and it is in line with our policy which we earlier deployed. Okay. Similarly, we can also try that vTransfer if you want. I don't know, maybe vTransfer.com probably. Right. So the website should open, but remember we just blocked the upload functionality, right? So maybe we might have to click on agree here. Say add files, we can add a file. I don't know, do we have a file to be added? In the downloads, do we have a file? Yes, looks like there's a file here. Let's grab that and let's try to, I don't know, maybe XYZ. Do we need to really fill that up? Oh, you need to, okay. So let's fill that up at maybe something like probably we'll have to use the emails provided in the guide. So let's try that. It's a bit slow, so let's try that again. Okay, so let's try with lab user 444 @gmail.com. Okay, and my email is basically labtest @user.com. okay, and we have the file, and I'm gonna say hey, just a message. When I click on transfer, it should actually fail. There you go, right? Something went wrong, which means that we are not able to upload, and that means that our policy which we put in earlier, where we blocked the vTransfer application from uploading, is also successfully working. Sweet. Okay. So what else do we want to do before we wind this? Okay. There's one more website which I just pulled up. So this is a website where you can probably download, a malware test file, right? And remember, we have enabled your malware analysis as well as part of the policy. And because of that, if I try to click and download, and remember, this is not domain based blocking, it is actual HTTPS decryption based blocking, right? So if I click on, say, this zip file, there you go, it is telling that it is not secure, right? So that file, because of that file, if you click on the diagnostic info, we should actually get more information, right? There you go. See, whenever you see SWG here, it means that it is getting blocked because of the gateway policies which we put in just now, right? Cool. So that's about that, right? So let's actually come back to let's come back here. The last thing which we want to talk about is the one last policy, I think, which is left. If you come back to the left side here, see, we have something called as data loss prevention policy, right? Data loss prevention is nothing but there are a lot of attacks, or there is a lot of cyber attacks which happen out there, because we are not just cyber attacks, right? Human beings make an error when they are uploading some file. They might upload some something confidential information out there into the internet, right? They might upload, say, a confidential file into Dropbox or into Google Drive, right? Or you might just put your credit card numbers or something like that, right? So how do we prevent that from happening, right? So since we have HTTPS decryption in place, how do we leverage that to kind of give that experience to the end users? So that's what this does. Here also, let's come here. So this is the policy, but before we create the policy, let's come to data classification on the left side. So here on the data classification, what we'll do is, there are a lot of, let's click on add here, right? First thing is, let's create a data classification name. Let's call it as, I don't know, maybe credit card. Just credit card, right? Or let's say credit card data, right? Just to make it simple. So credit card data, what we want to do is, let's use, Cisco already has a lot of built-in data identifiers, right? You have a lot of these. So let's utilize one of that. Let's go to credit card. Let's select this guy, right? And let's save that. So we created a data classification object which will look at credit card information. Okay. So next is, on the top, you see there's an option here to create custom dictionary as well, right? So we can create a custom dictionary by clicking on that, right? And what is the meaning of custom dictionary? Your organization might have some keywords, right? One of the most, one of the most common word which people use is internal only, right? In your reports and your confidential documents, right? So we can create something called as internal. Let's call it as let's keep it as internal. It's fine. We'll understand it. But here you'll have to mention the word. So it's going to be internal only, right? So you're trying to filter out if any of the document, of any of the text which you're uploading to the internet has this word in it, right? Internal only. So once you add that, you'll have to add it and save it. Okay, I might have misspelled it, which means I'll have to fix it. So I think I wrote, let's edit it. Okay. So it has to be, okay, let's remove that. Let's add it again. It's internal only. Okay, hope the spell is right. Perfect. Okay. So let's save that. So we created that object now, right? We created this object, and we will have to add that object, right, to a policy. Okay. So, right. So to add that, let's go and create again a new one, and this one we'll call it as, I don't know, maybe something like internal data. And here this time we are going to click on custom data identifiers and select this guy which we just now created and save it, right? So we have created like two different data classifications. One is for internal data, other one is the credit card data. Okay, so we have created all the objects needed. I think we are good to go to data loss prevention policy now. On the top, let's add a new rule, right? And let's call this rule as what? I don't know, maybe DLP, right? It's fine. Let's keep this as monitor, right? So if you keep it as monitor, then it won't get blocked, but it will just show up in the reports or in the logs. So, but that's fine. In the identities, let's make sure that we select the tunnel which we are using right now, right? We're using this lab tunnel, so let's select that guy. And in the data classifications, let's use the credit card data first to begin with, right? Which we created ourselves. Destination, let's select all destinations, right? So we are trying to scrape out the credit card data anywhere on the internet. Like anytime you are trying to upload a credit card information anywhere on the internet, it will just give you an error, or it will just give you a log, right? So let's save that. So now let's quickly jump onto our, hope that got saved. So let's quickly jump onto our other machine. Let's probably close the whole browser once. So open a new browser. There we go. So let's do get, let's go to one of this famous website, which is Get Credit Card Numbers, just to grab some fake credit card numbers from here, right? So let's grab that information. Let's copy that. And probably let's go to another website, which is very common for pasting, right? Pastebin.com. So let's go to that guy. Remember, HTTPS inspection is very much necessary for DLP, right? So let's click on agree. And this time let's paste it here, right? So let's paste it here. Okay, let's paste those credit card numbers over there. And I'm going to say create new paste. Okay. So that went through. Okay, it did not break it. It did not give us a block page. It just went to, but we should actually see that log appear where in our okay, this policy has been applied, which is good. So let's go to reporting, and in reporting we should actually have something called data loss prevention. There you go, here on the left side, and we should actually see some logs for the task which we just now did, right? There you go, right? So we have in the paste bin, this is the latest one, right? Looks like probably not the latest one, but maybe this one. Okay, so it looks like the latest one has still not shown up, but let me actually show you the one which I generated just a few minutes before. You can see here it has come. You get the identity information, you get the destination, and you also get the information from the log as well, right? You can see here the credit card information was kind of uploaded, so it kind of showed up here, right? So that's pretty cool. So the other one is now probably I can again go back and we can apply that other internal only policy as well, right? So we can again go back to data loss prevention, not in the reporting, sorry. Let's come back here. Let's come back here. So here we should have just one policy right now. So instead, let's go and create one more policy, right? Let's say add rule, and let's say this is basically for your internal, right? So let's just give the same name, but this time instead of monitoring, I'm just going to go and block it. Okay, and yeah, so what do we select here? The tunnel, exactly. We need to select the tunnel like we did earlier, so it's going to be the lab tunnel. Good, that got selected. In the destination, data classification, let's select this internal data classification which we created, and the destination this time, instead of selecting select destinations, right? We can actually select a particular application, right? So we can select paste bin maybe, yeah. So specific application. Looks good. So this is what we have. So we are blocking it, and we have put in the identity, we have put in the data classification, we have selected a specific application as well. So now let's go and save it, and we should basically be good to use this policy. That's probably gonna take a couple of minutes, so let's wait. Alright, so I think we could probably test it out now. Let's go to browser, let's open paste bin, and this time let's put in the text as internal only. Okay, and let's try to create the new paste, and there you go, blocked, right, because of our DLP policy. Perfect. It takes a bit of time for the logs to show up, but if it does, maybe we can have a look. Or you can also see the logs which I had captured from before as well showing up here, right? So you get information about the identity, the time, the application, as well as the matches of the words and so on, right? So that's pretty useful. Okay, so that's it, guys. I think we have covered everything. We did quite a lot actually, right from the start, right from the get-go, right? We started off with DNS Network Protection, right, where we did some DNS policies. Then we did Active Directory, and we synced the Active Directory with Umbrella. We did AnyConnect roaming client, right, mainly for laptops and users who are off networks. Then we did virtual appliances, right, and we looked at, we looked at how when you enable virtual appliance, obviously the AnyConnect will kind of go in the background. It will not forward the DNS request anymore. Then we looked at network tunnels, right, and following that immediately, once we set up the network tunnel, we were able to apply policies via a cloud delivered firewall, which we checked as well, layer 3 policies, layer 4 policies. And the final scenario, we talked about the secure web gateway and all the use cases of secure web gateway. We looked at SAML, we looked at different ways of putting the policies, right, very complicated policies. Then finally we looked at the DLP, data loss prevention, right? So it's a wholesome kind of lab. Please go check it out. If you have CCO ID, do try it out on dcloud, and hope you get benefit out of it, right? Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. Have a good one. Bye.